Welcome to Mindshift. I'm Brandon. Today is another Sunday video. This one's going to be a little bit different. I'm hoping that it will lighten things up as we've had some really heavy videos lately, but I also want to take care of some business. I often get all of these different kinds of comments or questions or claims, I guess is a better word, that one of two things. Hey, it doesn't matter. Yahweh's real. And you don't have to like it. You don't have to think it's moral. You don't have to think that his system is fair. But if he is indeed real, that's just the case. That's what we're dealing with. Or the second claim that I hear often is, hey, a God has to exist. You don't have to believe it's Yahweh, but there's obviously a creator of the universe here. But when I hear comments like that, sometimes it gets me thinking okay, if we had to have a God, who would be the best God to have? If I was actually going to worship another being, who would deserve my worship? That's a really hard question in general, and I'm going to give you a list today, and I'm not going to phrase it that way. This is not a list of gods I would worship, but this is a list of gods that I would much prefer. If there has to be a creator, and one of these man-made gods that we have obviously created for ourselves happens to be the right one, I'd want it to be one of these. And we're just going to do a little comparison with Yahweh. Really what this video is here's all the other gods I would rather be real than Yahweh. If there has to be a God, this is my vote. Now, this is a very hard list to put together, and it could have gone a million different ways. A couple caveats, and we're going to get right into the list. I understand that some of the gods I'm going to list are not perfect characters. Most gods aren't. You know why? Because they're all made in man's image. But most gods actually are better than Yahweh, which is why this list could have been so extensive. Even the gods that smite people and murder people and cause war, on average, seem to be much better than Yahweh. So maybe I should start with my initial gripes with Yahweh, and this could go on forever, so I'm going to be really brief here. But some of the things that I've looked for in other gods that I would rather worship than Yahweh are gods that don't kill children unnecessarily or at all. Gods that don't rely on child sacrifice to make up for their own mistakes. Gods that don't build us with an initial nature that is grotesque to them, that they can't stand, that they can't be in the presence of. Gods that don't use horrendous things like rape and miscarriage as punishment. Gods that are at least consistent. Maybe they're bad, maybe they have punishments that seem harsh, but they always deal it out the same way every single time. They don't break their own word. Gods that will just let you die at the end instead of commit you to one of two, in my opinion, horrendous afterlives. Gods that don't condone and endorse slavery. Gods that don't kill you if you intermarry with another non-chosen group of people, as if there's any real difference between ethnicities. Gods that are not misogynistic. Gods that don't hate women. Gods that don't get hung up on what you do sexually all the time. Gods that are not homophobic. Gods that will not test you even though they claim to be omniscient. Gods that will not commit you to eternal punishment because of what you think. Gods that didn't start out their entire world with a chosen people group while ignoring and or murdering everyone else. Gods that don't claim to not be the author of confusion and then write one holy book over 1400 years in 66 different books with over 40 different authors, most of whom were anonymous, and then say it's the only way we can know their son, which is the person we have to know to plead our case when we die. Gods that actually care about morality and don't just care if you know the right defense attorney or scapegoat. Gods that have laid out a consistent and even better law set, that don't concern themselves with what you should do when you have a wet dream or how long you should separate yourself from the group when you're menstruating. I could go on forever, but if we just stop the video right here as a quick summation of this God. And by the way, if you think Jesus negates any of these things, he doesn't. He either adds on to them or he condones them in his silence. Not to mention that if you believe any of the Christian doctrines, he is the same as God. He was there at the beginning. They did it all together or as themselves or himself or whatever you want to call it. But that's our Yahweh. So who could we worship instead that might be a step up, even if they're not a great god? Number one, let's go with Mithra, a Persian god. Even though it has these Persian and Zoroastrian roots, it also really took off in Rome in the 1st through 4th centuries. In fact, a lot of people believe that there is some Jesus building around Mithra. Mithra is a god of light and truth. Now, some of these claims are also made about God or Jesus, and I understand that. I'm trying to look at the whole of the argument here, though. Did they also do all these other horrendous things? Isn't it funny that Jesus was also a God of light and truth? This is a God of righteousness. This is a God who holds up justice and honor. He founds himself on holding up the cosmos and the order of the cosmos, as well as being the arbiter of moral integrity. When you worship Mithra, you really just think about the sun cycles and other celestial events. What a great thing, as opposed to burning the flesh of something that was once living and having to take life from it just to please your God. This God values fairness. That is something that Yahweh simply does not. So on almost all accounts here, I think Mithra for the win. Now, I'm not going in any particular order, by the way. This isn't like my favorite gods in tier list order or anything like that. I'm not even sure how many we're going to cover today. I just want to jump around, and if anything, this can be hopefully just a great introduction for many of you who don't have any comparative religious experience, who haven't read any of the other myths. This is something that fascinates me and always has, even when I was a believer. And even back then, I'd have these thoughts of, man, some of these gods are way less problematic. Number 2, and this one's going to be probably my most controversial, is going to be Quetzalcoatl. This is an Aztec, pre-Columbian Mesoamerican god. He is a god of knowledge and wisdom. There's a con coming at the end, but I have a reason why I'd still place him above Yahweh. He's considered the patron of learning and creativity and is concerned with art and culture. He was a god that fed his people. He's a farming god. He is associated with creating the fertility in the land. His tendencies lean toward peace and harmony and civilization even. Again, he's creative and he's obsessed with innovation. Now, the con is going to be human sacrifice, although it's not directly linked to him. So Quetzalcoatl is a member in the pantheon of Aztec gods. And unlike the Greek pantheon per se, not each of them have their own very distinguished ideals. There's a lot of overlap. One thing that is certain is the Aztecs were definitely fond of human sacrifice. The numbers are actually pretty astounding and definitely outweigh anything that happens from Yahweh. Actually, it might be a close call if you consider all the people Yahweh kills versus all the people the Aztecs sacrificed. For instance, the Aztecs never committed an entire genocide like the God of the Bible does. He never said creation was so bad, I'm going to kill everyone except for 7 or 8 people. If you consider animal life, there's billions of deaths on Yahweh's hands. But if we just count up the deaths from the Bible, we're in the millions. During the height of their supreme reign, the Aztecs were something around 20,000 human sacrifices a year. This didn't go on for that long of a period of time, though. It would take a long time before you catch up with Yahweh's numbers. And unlike Yahweh, who does involve himself in child and human sacrifice, and then just takes it upon himself to kill the rest, all of those people are burning in hell or living an eternity of slave worship in heaven, wherein the Aztec afterlife does not seem to be eternal, and you are desired once you're dead. You just have to cross through 9 levels, and there's challenges, like crossing mountains that crash into each other. This was called Mictlan. It's a fascinating afterlife setup, and I think that it's probably very superior to Yahweh's. Again, we have a God here who wants to feed his people, who wants them to be creative and industrious, to work with each other to make great things, as opposed to, oh, that one time those people almost built too big a tower, let me separate everyone and confuse them forever. Hey, I don't like the way people are not obeying my ridiculous commands. Let me cause drought and pestilence on the land. Yahweh's character is just going to look worse and worse as we go through this. When an Aztec god can beat you, you're probably doing something wrong. Okay, next is going to be the Hindu god Ganesha. He is the son of Lord Shiva and is considered the god of wisdom and intellect, 2 very beautiful things. This is a god of adventure and endeavor and blessing those who challenge themselves and will to create. He is a god that removes obstacles from one's path. Removing obstacles from a path as opposed to making people wander around for 40 years in the desert, obstacle after obstacle, instead of just letting them make the 11-day journey across. One of Ganesha's biggest pros is that he is an accommodating god. He is an inclusive god. He will accept anyone from anywhere with any background. This is in direct opposition to Yahweh. Again, the only cons that are going to really come with this god are the pantheon that he is a part of. Are there definitely worse gods in Hinduism? Are there bad afterlives in Hinduism? Yes. But this is the cool thing of not being stuck with one god. Yahweh had to be the one and only, even though we have the Trinity. Even though Yahweh came from a pantheon of gods. Like, this is just fact, and we'll be talking about that more in future videos. But Ganesha here, he's one of the good ones. Next on our list is Amaterasu. She comes from Japanese folklore. She is a goddess, a deity of Shintoism. She's part of the Kami, which is a group of spirits or gods, and she is truly benevolent. She is seen as a sun god, shining her light, protecting the earth, encouraging growth. She looks for harmony and natural balance. She endorses environmental protection and the sacredity of nature. No bloody animal sacrifices for her. No dominion over all the other animals because you're the the most important as a human for her: equality, benefit for all, purity, and a sense of motherly care. She's a keeper. Next, let's head over to Egypt and do another goddess, and this is going to be Hathor. Hathor has a long history, thousands of years, intricate weaving tales with the other gods and goddesses of this time frame. She is the goddess of love and beauty. Her presence is associated with good feelings, joy, and even sensuality. Wow, a god that doesn't shy away from one of the things that makes us most human. A god that tells us to embrace our sensuality, to enjoy it. This is also a god of music and dance, of free expression, of creating something beautiful, and not always just for worship purposes, but for true joy in life. This is a god that loves celebration. So yeah, you could fault her that if you follow this god, you're going to maybe give in to your carnal pleasures a bit more, but I think it sure beats the alternatives. And to round it out, to balance that out, she is often represented as a nurturer. Like most goddesses, she's bringing a motherly quality of care and attentiveness. A sense of security is something she is so well known for. That sounds to me like the mom who understands you might go out and have one beer too many sometimes, but she'll do everything she can to make sure that you come home safe, and when you get home, she'll take care of you and maybe help you learn a lesson from it. I would much rather worship something like that than Yahweh. Next, let's do a Greek god. Now, this is hard to choose from. Again, I kind of wanted to be all over the world. I mean, I could have done like 10 Greek gods that are better than Yahweh. I think Helios is probably going to be the best fit to this. Even Hades. I tell you what, really understand the Greek myths and Hades, and this is a god who does his job, who does what he says he's going to do, that takes no pleasure in anything excessive, etc. Like Hades would be a good candidate. Athena, even though she is the goddess of war, but also love and beauty, she kicks Yahweh's butt here. But I'm going to go with Dionysus. This is the god of wine, and I think this is a fun one because he's credited with the creation of this wonderful drink that enhances life. That's really what he's about. He's about enhancing life. Drink, be merry, be joyful, be grateful to be alive and enhance that livelihood. Be liberated. He's also a huge fan of the theater and the arts and creativity, many things of which get shut down by Yahweh. Cons? Yeah, maybe you're going to get drunk worshiping this god and enjoy your life a little bit too much. Pros? A thirst for what is real, for being in the moment, for experiencing pleasure. And this isn't all some hedonistic tantric kind of a thing. This is real acceptance of real life and the good parts of life, knowing that we have an inescapable suffering in all of the other mundane moments. But when we can party, when we can celebrate, life is good. Next we have Kuan Yin, which is going to be a Buddhist or Chinese folklore goddess. Also known as Avalokiteshvara, she is a goddess that has one goal: alleviate suffering. Wow, that's something I can definitely get behind. That might be the opposite of Yahweh's goal. That is her actual vow, to alleviate suffering. She is a goddess of compassion. And for who? For humans? For her chosen group? No, for all sentient creatures. What insight for a people group to come up with a deity that has this as their mission statement. So many cultures had this so much better than this ancient Middle Eastern one where we get two of the most horrendous religions of all time. And unfortunately, also the most widespreading. And a lot of that has to do with the fear that they instill. Not a lot of fear for Kuan Yin, not a lot of fear for the goddess of compassion who vows to alleviate all suffering. She's got feminine energy, she's a nurturer, she's a caretaker, she's just all good all the time. Next, I think we'll go with Odin. We haven't talked about a Norse god yet. Now, Thor would have been interesting, but there's some things I really like about Odin. Now let's get the bad out of the way first. Odin is a war god. He is the leader of the Valkyries who choose fallen warriors to bring them to Valhalla, a place where you drink and are merry and prep for the great battle Ragnarok. There's some interesting tie-ins there with some things in Revelation, but we'll save it for another time. Then you also do have a negative afterlife in the Norse mythologies. That's going to be Hel, H-E-L. That's both the goddess and the place. Now there's two different versions of this Hel. One, the thought is that you go on living like you did in your normal life. It's just another recurrence, essentially. There is one that says that there is some gloom or dark features to it, although what we hear about Hel, the goddess of the underworld, is that she is indifferent to the fate of men. Much better than purposely trying to torture them as best as possible forever. But what are the good things about Odin? I think what attracts me to him is his seeking for wisdom. This is a god that sacrificed himself, and actually something that he could use and can't get back. not his son for 3 days that came right back and couldn't die in the first place. He gave up an eye for wisdom. He's a God of poetry and inspiration. Yes, a God of war and death as well, but really the more beautiful aspects of war and death, dying in something you believe in, achieving something great. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Part of it is essentially a death cult. You want to die well so that you can receive the better place, and you die well by killing your enemies. So, I mean, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but there's at least something more benevolent in nature to that concept. And again, it's coming from a God who is seeking wisdom, not one who claims to be all wise all the time from the very beginning. The intention is more set on heroism and bravery instead of just bloodshed and conquer. I think that puts him well ahead of Yahweh. Now, we already did Egyptian gods, which is technically African, but let's go West African. Let's go to Ghana and let's look at Nyame. Nyame is a really amazing god, I think. This is the god of the Akan people. This is a god that is wrapped up into a lot of cosmology. This god is credited with the creation of the universe, earth, and all living beings. It is about total power over the cosmos. So we have some similarities there in terms of Yahweh, but look at some of the not so subtle differences coming up. This god is a caretaker. And this isn't a goddess. We have a male god who created the cosmos, who is immensely powerful, but is best represented as a caretaker, a provider, and a protector. He's benevolent and ensures and cares about the well-being of all creatures. In his meantime, he's over there maintaining the cosmos and the natural order of things, but he's happy to intervene and again create that more beneficial life and society for his creation, not his people group, for all creation. Can you imagine if this was the roots of Yahweh, if this was like the guidelines, then imagine what Yahweh's 10 commandments might look like. We wouldn't waste the first 4 worrying about ensuring enough worship for ourselves. We wouldn't have ones in there like honor father and mother because I have other commandments that say I'll kill you if you don't. They would be actual good commandments to increase well-being, safety, and security. Again, we can do better. Man has already done better. Look at all of these examples so far. And Nyame is a perfect example. And to round out the list, let's double dip into Hinduism. I have a soft spot for Krishna, which is kind of a funny thing to say, but Krishna has always been a god that really interests me. He's the 8th reincarnation of Lord Vishnu, one of the principal deities in Hinduism. His life and teachings are accounted for in the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the very first non-biblical holy books that I ever read. And I remember, again, even at a pretty young age, thinking like, man, does God seem problematic, Yahweh. But it didn't matter because this was some made up God and mine was real. But anyways, let's talk about Krishna. These are some of the best descriptors I can think of for a god. Wisdom and knowledge still, right? That's wonderful. I definitely want a god that cares about wisdom and knowledge, that is a fan of learning and growing. How about compassion and love? Yes, I would definitely want that on the list. Compassion and love for everyone. Krishna is known for his boundless love. Not love for a chosen people group, not love if you're doing the right thing, truly boundless love. He's a god of playfulness. What a cool concept to have in a god. And he acts as guide and protector. Isn't that what we're all kind of craving at the end of the day? Something higher than ourselves that's out there, that's looking out for us, but also is willing to truly guide us along. Not teach us lessons, so to speak, not punish us so we learn better and do better next time with the end goal of pleasing it more. Guiding us from their abundant love of wanting us to learn and grow in wisdom, all the while being playful and kind and protective. Krishna offers solace for any and all that seek it. Now, again, I've said some beautiful things about many gods here on this list. I don't believe any of them. None of those are true. And if we tried to make them true, if we built enough stories up around them, if we worshipped and prayed to them, they'd have the same flaws as Yahweh in the end. They wouldn't hold up their end of the bargain. But in principle, they are leagues above Yahweh. And what I think that I'd want anyone to glean from this most is that all of these other gods are man-made. And in my opinion, and I think a fair one, they are indeed much better than Yahweh. And that's what man's been able to come up with. Some of these older than Yahweh, from all cultures around all the world. Even with their flaws, they beat this all-perfect, all-knowing, all-beneficial God we claim. How much greater then would an actual God be, right? This is the thing. I'm always told I have a failure of imagination to understand the very presence and essence of God, of Yahweh. No, I have a realistic depiction from him from his not so holy book, and it falls incredibly short of what any deity should be. And we've created much better with our limited man-made imaginations already. It is they who have the failure of imagination to think what an actual good God would be like. I can't imagine, but I know it's not Yahweh. So this was the video for today. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope it was fun to get into some of these other religions and practices and gods and goddesses. This is always a topic of fascination for me, and I was really glad to be able to share it with you guys today. So thanks. Let me know which god, if you could choose one, you would worship, and put it in the comments below, or what you think of my list. Thanks again, and until next time, keep thinking. I wanted to personally thank my top tier Iconoclast patrons Shawn Skaggs and Jason Rollins, and my atheist advocate patron Jarrod Nichols for their incredible generosity. Also a big shout out to my secular scholar patrons, of which we have some new ones. All other patrons are listed in the description of each video. Please consider joining this great group if you enjoy these videos or believe in my mission. Thanks, and have a great day.